Thank you very much. Förlåt mig, min svenska är ganska dåligt, men jag ska presentera på engelska. Nästa gång jag ska presentera på svenska. Okay, I worked on the high value circulation in the biosphere, and to start my presentation, firstly, I want to say a quick thanks to the Ragn-Sells Foundation that made it possible for me to do it, as well as my supervisor from KTH, Monica Olson, and my supervisor from Ragn-Sells, Graham Aid. Thank you very much, and also the support I get from my wife as well. Thank you. So the high value circulation in the biosphere, we're looking at the challenges that we have. One of the challenge that we had in HOGBYTORP, as well as the other challenge that we're looking at is a global challenge. We're trying to think both globally and locally. So that's, so it's innovative conversion of organic waste to feed and chemicals via insects. Okay, so the global challenge that we have is that according to the Food and Agriculture Organization is that we need to increase our food production because our population is growing every time. And even as our population is growing every time, we find that we need to feed this population. The second point is talking about livestock is taking a lot of resources, it's competing for resources. So a lot of resources are going into the production of livestock, but then these resources that are going into the production of livestock, we could bring down the environmental footprint by bringing in the aspect of insects. Instead of livestock feeding on plants that we grow, instead of that we can use insects to feed them. So this is the basis of this presentation. So the main advantages of insects production is that they are quite rich in oil and protein, and then they're a considerable alternative to things like fish meal, the soy meal that we may use to feed fish, as well as different other animals. We can use insects, and this is the basis of the project. Right now, I want to say that in the EU, it's a problem. We cannot feed insects to human beings as well as to animals if they are dead. We can only feed them if they are live. Otherwise, they are considered as processed animal proteins. So that processed animal products, that is not good enough according to the EU. But people are trying to fight hard to make this to make a change to this legislation. So we go to the problem in HOGBYTORP. Our organic waste handling in HOGBYTORP is in such a way that we have organic waste reception part there, and then we usually take it to the crusher where we crush the different types of organic waste in its packaging material. Then the reason for the crushing is so that we can have a slurry, an organic slurry that we take to the biogas plant. And then out of this process, we have a compost pile, which is a mixture of organic waste as well as the remainders of the packaging waste. It's a mixture of the two, and that is a problem that we want to sort out. This is what I'm talking about. This is the mixture that comes out when we crush the two. And so to solve this problem, we thought of using insects to feed this stuff to those insects called the black soldier flies. So I will quickly introduce you to these insects called black soldier flies. But before I do that, the idea that we had is that what if we replace the compost pile that we had with this BSF process that I'm going to talk about? What can it give us? What are the results that it can give us? And the second scenario is that what if we took out the aspect of the biogas production and then we only had this BSF process? What are the benefits that it can have to the organization? So a brief look at the BSF. This is the black soldier fly. It's not indigenous in Sweden. It's found in, it's supposed to be found in Sweden. It's found 40 degrees south latitude as well as 45 degrees north. Between those two, that's where it's found. So I will tell you a bit about them. The adult fly lives only about 5 to 8 days. It doesn't feed, and then it needs a humidity of about 30 to 90%. And then a temperature of about 25 to 27 degrees Celsius for them to grow and mate and all that thing. Meaning that in Sweden we can only do it in summer, which is a very, very short period of time. Then the eggs, an average adult is able to lay eggs, it is able to mate within 2 days of its life time, and then an average adult would give as a number of eggs between 500 and 900 eggs, and the eggs only live for about 4 days before they can hatch. Humidity of greater than 60%, and it's a lot of different parameters that are needed to be controlled for this thing to happen. And then the larvae, this is the most important part, because this is the part that feeds on the waste that we want. That's, according to us, this is the most productive part. They are very voracious feeders, and then they live about 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, they should have fed on all the waste and all that. And then there is humidity, humidity needed, as well as the temperature that is required for them to thrive. And then there we have that is the prepupae, and that is the pupa. So what happens is that the larvae will be feeding on the waste, and then as it feeds in the waste, with time it will want to come out of the waste pile, because it wants to go to a dry place where it can pupate from and turn into an adult. And so that movement of the larvae from the waste is what we take advantage of after it has eaten all the waste. Then it self-harvests. Then we just collect it. Now the most important thing is that these guys are made up of about 30% fat and 40% protein, and that's what we want to take advantage of. Others, the 30% protein fat, they've used it to make biodiesel, and yet others, the 40% protein, have used it in fish meal and a lot more other stock feed, even as we're going to see shortly soon. So from the prepupa, it goes into the pupa, and then the pupa goes into an idle mode until finally it goes into the fly stage. So you will discover that there is no feeding in all these stages. The only feeding part is in this part, which is the larval stage. And this is very good for us, because then this doesn't give us any pests, because it doesn't eat, so it doesn't give us any diseases. In fact, it keeps away other flies like house flies and all that, so it's quite hygienic. The whole process takes about 30 to 40 days for it to mature. Okay, so the experiments that I did were in, I tried 3 different types of waste streams. The first one is fruits. We usually receive damaged fruits from different stores. So I had to try them on that meal. Horse manure as well as the slurry reject. I called it the slurry reject, the image that I showed you before from the organic waste treatment site. So this was, as you saw, there were a lot of parameters that need to be controlled, more especially that it's not here, it's not indigenous to Sweden. So we had to control a lot of parameters, and we did this in winter. This is the organic waste shed, and this is the small house where we did the experiments from. Okay, so this is an example of the feeding buckets that we had. If you see, we have the ramps. When they, like I said, when they finish feeding within 2 weeks, they need to come up through these ramps, and then they self-harvest. We collect them down there. The ramps are usually a maximum of maybe 45 degrees. Okay, so this is the way the experiment was set up. Inside there, we have our heater there, and we have our cage. Once they get harvested there, we put them in the cage. Okay, so this is an example of the feeding process with the leachate getting collected down there. Here they are feeding on the fruits. Very nice picture there. They're feeding on the fruits, and they seem to be enjoying it. And then when you can see that they change color. Here they're a bit whitish, and then here they become a bit darker. When they have fed enough and they've built all their body mass, they start migrating, coming out, and then we start collecting them, like I said. But sometimes there can be a problem, like you see, they can come out from everywhere. And then here, this is the collection, the collection part. Here there's a bit of peat. We put peat in there so that they don't migrate, because they always try to move around to look for a dry place to pipette from. So we keep them in there. And then after that, then that's where we put them now in the cage, where they'll be able to mate from and then increase their populations. So this is basically the process. And this is the way the eggs were collected. These guys in nature, they usually lay eggs in cracks and crevices, maybe in rock and all that. So we tried to imitate that, and these are like cardboard straps with a bit of food source down there, so that when the larvae come out, they start, the baby larvae, they start feeding down there before we could put them in the waste. Basically, this is the way the experiments ran. Okay, so I'll go through the results a bit. I'll not bore you with a lot of details about the results, but these were the parameters that I was using to calculate what we were getting from these guys. One of them is the per pupil weight. How much weight? To us, what is very interesting is the weight. We need them to have good weight so that we can get much out of them. And then the dry matter reduction, we want them to reduce our waste as much as possible. And then the bioconversion rate, that is a dry amount, the amount of dry matter that is converted to dry prepupae. This is very important to us. We want as much as possible them to change the waste into their body mass, which we can use. And also the feed conversion rate, they need to convert their feed, the feed into their body mass. So this table here, this graph here is showing the different parameters. This green color, it's the fruits. This is the average of the results from the fruits. And then the yellow one is from the horse manure. And then the green one is that waste which we have in HOGBYTORP from the organic waste treatment. We see that the green one, in terms of per pupil weight, they weighed heavier with the ones which were fed on the reject, the material that we have, the material of interest in HOGBYTORP. They did very well. And then for this is the bioconversion rate. We still see that here also the material in HOGBYTORP performed very well. The bioconversion rate, the higher the bioconversion rate, the more the effectiveness of reducing the biomass or the waste. And then for the FCR, which is the feed conversion rate, the lower the FCR, the more efficient, the more efficiency of the conversion into biomass of the insects. So basically, out of it all, I discovered that this material, which is the reject material, which we have in HOGBYTORP, it was their favorite, which they liked it most, and we could get a lot of things from it. Okay, so according to literature, we are told that they can always give us 40% fat and 30% fat and 40% protein. And these were the results that we got. When we fed them on fruits, they gave us about 38% of protein. That is lower than the literature values. But on the manure, they surprisingly gave us about 41%. Then on the reject, according to the literature values, it stood by that. They gave us about 40% of the protein. And then the fat, we have the highest here in the fruits. This one is higher even than the literature values. Then it was, of course, lower in the manure. And then with the reject, the one we have in HOGBYTORP, it was quite good still. So we tried. I take you back a bit to our scenarios. Based on the 2014 amounts of waste that organic waste that we're receiving in HOGBYTORP, if we decided to remove the compost pile here and we just decided to put the BSF process here, we could have about 97 tons of protein, which we could use in our production of stock feed, and about 73 ton of fat, which could really be good for us, and the process could give us quite a good amount of money there. Then the second scenario, we are saying if we did away with the biogas production, we are saying that the BSF process alone could give us about 252 tons of protein and 190 tons of fat. To get these amounts of tons of, say, other livestock products, there is a higher environmental footprint than it is here with the BSF process. So the conclusion is that we were able to attain the values that we were looking for. This could be a way of contributing to animal protein production. Of course, we may not eat them directly, but we can give them as stock feed to animals. Then we could, in a way, reduce the environmental footprint that is involved in raising animals for food. And also, we saw that it's feasible to even though we imported them from elsewhere, it is feasible to grow them here in Sweden if we keep them under under certain conditions. Then here I have an example as my last part. I have an example of the companies that are doing quite well in this area. We have the AgriProtein in South Africa, AgriProtein Technologies, and also Enterafeed in Canada. These people are taking advantage of what these black soldier fly can do, and they are making what they are calling mud meal and different types of products. One thing I didn't mention is that when they finish eating the feeding on the waste, they leave a very rich soil conditioner, which can be used as a fertilizer. And this is what these guys are doing as well. So I think this is something that is really promising that could even be used even here in Sweden. And lastly, yesterday I was reading a paper about SLU where they are trying to research something about these black soldier flies, and they're saying that they could take care of the pharmaceuticals that we have in the environment. We may have a lot of pharmaceuticals in the environment, so these guys are able to take care of that as well. So it's a very wide application that could be really helpful to us. Okay.
Thank you, Richard. Very interesting new type of food, isn't it? Thank you. Here's a small present for us. It's a recycled product.